Hi, and welcome to week 11 of English 1302. This week we continue on with our exploration of the poetry of Robert Frost. I really hope you're enjoying this little mini unit because Robert Frost was a fascinating poet. You don't really have to understand his life so much to understand his poetry because his poetry is very much natural, very much based in nature. It considers nature as a source of wisdom. And he did go through some tough times, it's true, but surprisingly few of his poems reflect that tragic loss that he experienced in his life. Now, unfortunately, some of the poems I've picked for you tend to be on the sadder side, and I think that's just coincidence because he wrote a lot of poems which are very upbeat and uplifting and very encouraging. So this week, for week 11, we're doing After Apple Picking, which, is about death. I agree with that. Birches, surprisingly, is about a desire for reincarnation. Mending Wall is not about a desire for isolation. It's about a desire for community. He wishes he could be closer to his neighbor, but he also enjoys kind of picking on his neighbor. He calls him a caveman, basically. He says he's an old stone savaged arm who picks up boulders like Michael Jordan is palming a basketball, and he walks in shade, not of trees only. So he calls him not very bright, and a caveman, and not very imaginative. So, and then the last two, Runaway and Dust of Snow, there's not a lot of deep meaning to those. They're just kind of light and fun, and the Runaway is about a little baby horse, a foal. I think it's a Morgan, and it gets scared at the first snow, and the guy who's walking by, the author, says whoever owns it ought to come and take it in. That's about it. And Dust of Snow is even lighter. It's just he's standing on a tree, and a crow shakes a little light dusting of snow on him, and it just makes him feel good. That's it. So not a lot of depth to those last two, but the first three really are. I really encourage you to make use of all your resources. And one of the most powerful tools that you have to understand these poems is, of course, YouTube. We talked last time about the Favorite Poem Project. Just go to YouTube and Google the name of these poems, and you'll run across several videos which do a really wonderful job of explaining them to you. Now, on the PowerPoint I posted, one of the slides contains a list of his themes. I strongly encourage you to print those out. You don't have to know a lot about the life of Robert Frost, again, because a lot of his life didn't have a huge influence on his poetry, but you certainly need to know his themes. Now, let me call a timeout and back up for just a second, because there was one thing that a lot of people missed on the discussion post. It's not that they missed the points, they just glanced over it. But when you're writing about what aspect of his life influenced his poetry, really, after he inherited a farm, he lived and worked there for 10 years, then as soon as he could, he sold it, moved to England, and he becomes an overnight success. Now that's huge. That's amazingly rare, and he's a great poet, deserves it. But when he moves to London, he falls into a group of editors and other poets who really help him both write his poem and get it published and get it accepted by the public. And so he's just like this huge success. Within 2 years, he's moved back to America. He lives in a farm in Derry, New Hampshire, and that has to have a huge impact on his writing, because when he knows he can write what he wants instead of having to please the public, trying to please a publisher in order to get published, it really kind of frees a writer up. So don't look past that. The fact that he's an overnight success has a huge impact on his writing and the poems he produces. But we also look for ideas, general ideas, and you won't see all of these in every poem. In fact, you'll usually just see one or two. But some of his themes, some of his unstated main ideas were things like limitations and isolations of the individual, Mending Wall, of course, difficulty of understanding existence, why are we here, death, entropy and extinction. Entropy is a scientific principle which basically states that all matter moves to the greatest state of disorder or chaos or decay. He writes about youth and the loss of innocence, He writes a lot about nature as a source of wisdom. He writes about rationality versus imagination. Again, Birches is really him imagining what life would be like if we could live it and then come back and start all over again. He uses the birch tree as a metaphor for moving toward heaven and then bending over and coming back, touching back down and starting again. And then fate versus chance, just what is luck and what is destiny. Okay, I also want to talk to you about your research papers. I have been grading your outlines. My first comment has got to be sure to read and follow the directions, especially like the announcements. When I post an announcement about an assignment, it's because there's something I want to draw your attention to. And one of the last ones I posted last Friday was before you turn in your outline, make sure your outline looks like an outline. I even gave you an example. Several students have posted outlines with big, huge, long theses and big, huge, long topic sentences and basically full paragraphs. For an outline, you really don't want that. The outline is a tool, first of all, just to get you started. I mean, I know the final draft's not due till the 23rd, but this is just to get you moving, to get you going. And then now I'm going to make comments on it that will help you, one, decide which sources to use, and two, which or how to narrow the focus. That's a pretty common problem with this one because the topic itself is so broad. And even when you narrow the focus 2 or 3 or 4 steps, sometimes you find you have to narrow it one more. So I'll make comments on your outlines. Now remember, the outline kind of sort of locks you in. So if you submit an outline and it doesn't get any comments at all, then you need to follow that outline for your final draft. But if it says, like on your works cited page, if it says not a useful source, you need to find another source. If on your first page, if it says too broad or vague or anything like that, then it means you need to revise it. You need to change it for the final draft. But anyway, so be sure to read the assignment sheet, follow along with the instructions. Let me know if you have any questions about the research writing. And please use Google Scholar. Google Scholar will turn up really good sources for you, and other types of search engines really won't. You want to use sources that have an authority, who have a name attached, somebody actually wrote them, who will put his name on it, depth, timeliness, and of course citation. Either they've cited other sources or other sources have cited them. Either one's fine. All right, but here's the key. Don't stop. I know that November 23rd seems like a long time away. It's not. A writing project like this will really go better if you work on it in increments. Sit down today and write a paragraph. Come back to it tomorrow, write another paragraph. Take a couple days and write a paragraph after that. And just kind of build it like that. Keep in mind what you're trying to do is you're trying to convey one idea which is supported by research. Think of it like an argument. If you're trying to convince your boss that you deserve a raise, then you're going to back that up with facts and character references from other employees or former bosses or customers. And so those will be the citations in your paper. Be sure you format the paper correctly according to MLA. And if you have any questions about any of that, drop me an email. And good luck.